I thought Vanessa and I had the ideal marriage at one point. I was a productive man, committed to creating a future for us, and she was my lovely, lively, and outgoing wife. I didn't mind that she was always the center of attention when we entered a room together because she was always wearing the best outfits, costly tastes. She had been raised in a wealthy household, and I had always been pleased to support her and offer her the life she was used to. But in retrospect, I see now that I had been blind for years. I ignored the signs, the whispered phone calls late at night, the way she dismissed calls while she worked on her jewelry, and the luxury bags that suddenly appeared in our house without explanation. I should have questioned it sooner. I should have realized that loyalty couldn't be maintained by love alone. Then came the announcement that shattered the illusion of our beautiful life. Vanessa told me she was taking a girls' trip to Paris. I've always enjoyed traveling, so even though the timing surprised me, I didn't think much of it at first. But something felt off as she packed. So I asked, "You just planned this out of nowhere?" Vanessa grinned as she folded silk gowns into a high-end suitcase. "You know how it is, sweetie," she said, flashing that practiced, dazzling smile. "You wouldn't want me to miss it, would you?" I had to laugh. Claire and the girls had suddenly decided on this trip. She walked over, kissed my cheek, and reassured me. "I'll call you every night." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But as she packed her belongings that evening, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. It wasn't like I had never indulged her before. Our weekend excursions, lavish vacations, I had always been the one paying. But something about this trip didn't feel right. I told myself I was overanalyzing, that Vanessa was simply enjoying the life I had worked so hard to build for us. But doubt had already taken root. And soon, it would become an undeniable whisper. Late one afternoon, as I was finishing up work in my office, my phone buzzed. I barely glanced at it, expecting a routine notification. But when I saw the message, my entire world shifted. "Bank alert, first-class plane ticket purchased." My gut clenched. I hadn't planned any flights. I tapped into my banking app, my fingers trembling, my heart pounding in my ears. There it was. For a brief moment, I told myself it must be a mistake. Maybe Vanessa had just booked her ticket under my name. But I had a feeling it wasn't that simple. As I clicked deeper into the transaction history, my pulse quickened. More charges, upscale hotels, designer boutiques, Michelin-starred restaurants. Everything lined up perfectly. Vanessa wasn't going on a girls' trip. She was taking someone else on a romantic getaway, on my dime. Like a punch to the gut, the realization hit me. I had been paying for another man's fantasies while Vanessa smiled at me, kissed me, and said goodbye. My hands clenched the edge of my desk. A part of me wanted to call her, to demand answers, to force her to admit the truth. But I took a deep breath. I knew how this would go. She would lie. She would twist the facts. She would make me doubt myself, but this time, I wasn't going to give her the chance. I scrolled through the flight details. 2 first-class tickets. Searched the other passenger's name. Derek, a so-called business associate Vanessa had mentioned in passing. Someone I shouldn't have worried about. Except now he was taking my wife to Paris. Sleeping in the rooms I had unknowingly paid for. She thought she was untouchable, that I wouldn't notice. She was wrong. A slow, burning anger settled in my chest. But instead of acting on impulse, I did what I do best. I planned. I went over every transaction, noting every little detail, every charge, every reservation, every piece of proof I needed. Then, I picked up my phone. "Hello," I said calmly to the bank representative. "There's been unauthorized activity on my account." Within minutes, my cards were canceled. The hotel bookings? Canceled. The luxury shopping spree Vanessa had been planning? Denied. And the first-class flight to Paris? Gone. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Let's see how she does without my money. Vanessa had spent years pretending to be the perfect wife, but now the mask was off. I needed more proof. So I made another call, this time to the airline. My wife and I have a flight booked, I said casually. I need to make some changes. Could you confirm the reservation details? The agent pulled up the information. Yes, sir. 2 first-class seats to Paris, 1 for Vanessa and 1 for Derek Collins. Hearing his name spoken out loud made it real. I smiled. I'd like to cancel both tickets, please. Click. Done. Vanessa was about to land in Paris with nothing paid. 4. No first-class seat, no luxury spending money, no hotel, and she wouldn't know it until she arrived at the airport, fully expecting her dream getaway. 2 days passed. I carried on as if nothing had happened. I didn't ask about her trip. I played the role of the trusting husband. On the morning of her departure, she was practically glowing. Dressed in designer travel wear, nails freshly done, she hummed to herself as she packed. She had no idea. "Are you sure you don't mind?" she asked sweetly, giving me that well-practiced look. I met her gaze, my face unreadable. "You're the best," she beamed, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "I'll bring you back. Something special, I promise." I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. She walked out the door, completely unaware that her perfect getaway was about to turn into a nightmare. I sat back, phone in hand, waiting for the call. And sure enough, an hour after her flight was scheduled to leave, it came. Vanessa. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was sharp, frantic. "David, my flight was canceled. The airline says it was withdrawn. Did you do this?" I smirked, leaning back in my chair. "Why would I cancel your flight, Vanessa?" She was silent for a moment, breathing heavily. I could see her standing in the airport, red-faced. Her designer luggage beside her broke. "David, I need you to call the airline. They can fix this," she pleaded. I chuckled softly. "Sorry, Vanessa. I'm a little busy right now. Maybe Derek can help?" Click. I set my phone down, exhaled, and took a sip of my whiskey. This wasn't about getting even. This was about reclaiming my life. Vanessa had spent years meticulously creating the persona of the worry-free, all-things-woman regarding money, as she always had me to rely on. But now that she's gone, Derek would see her for who she truly was if there were no cards, money, or safety net. He wasn't going to stay since she had thrown everything away for this, and I understood exactly how men like him worked. The affair had put our marriage and our lives together in jeopardy for this man, and ultimately, she would lose him as well. That was when it was going to sink in that the betrayal wasn't mine, but rather hers. I leaned back, allowing the quiet to descend upon me, aware that each moment that goes by, Vanessa's panic was getting worse. I could have left her there or let her work it out on her own, stuck forever, but no. I wanted to watch to see what she would do next. Her fall, so I waited, and I eventually picked up David when the next call arrived. I let the silence linger, breathing as though relieved. "Yes, Vanessa, my God, I appreciate you responding," but she hurried away. "I understand that you're unhappy, however. If you could just unlock my card so I can at least say no," I responded simply. I leaned back in my chair and muttered, "You heard me?" in a calm voice. "You can't just do it, David." I cut my tone, abruptly. "Now you're on your own." Vanessa took a trembling breath and said, "Whatever happens now, it's on you." The first honest thing she said was, "I don't know what to do," and I grinned. "To me for a while, then figure it out," I stated in an emotionless voice. After that, I hung up the phone, knowing this was just the start. I let out a quiet exhale as I felt the weight of my choice sink in. There was no going back now that I had given Vanessa every opportunity to be truthful, every chance to choose loyalty, and she had discarded everything for a brief fantasy, leaving her stranded in Paris. I pictured her sitting in the mess she made, totally at my mercy. The only thing she could do was that airport, furiously pacing in an attempt to get back to me. Perhaps she was still holding on to the hope that I would reconsider, give in, and rescue her from her own treachery, but she had no one. She had spent years underestimating me, and I realized that my tolerance had run out long before she had ever set foot on that plane. Assuming I would always be the one to forgive, overlook, would always be the one to pick up the pieces. She was mistaken. For a few hours before my phone chimed once more, she called me again. I let it ring before leaving a voicemail. I didn't intend to respond, but I hit play because I wanted to hear how desperate she had gotten. David. I don't know what was causing her voice to become unsteady and almost break. But just talk to me. Derek is furious and claims that I shouldn't have had this issue. A backup plan. Please, just help. I promise I didn't anticipate this happening. Please don't do this to me. I'll come home, we'll chat, and I'll fix this. I shook my head and laughed bitterly, but she still didn't understand. She had harmed herself. So I erased the voicemail without answering, knowing what would happen next. Derek, the man she was beginning to reveal his actual nature for which he had risked all, had been content to savor the opulence, pricey meals, and first-class treatment so long as someone else was paying for it. But now that she was stranded and broke, she had no way to pay for it. He was already searching for a way out, and Vanessa had meticulously spent years constructing her life to fit in with her wealth, prestige, and the appearance of power. But she had never constructed anything herself. Instead, she possessed all illusions. She believed that I was the reason she was untouchable, but now that I had severed our relationship, she had nothing left. I sipped my coffee and relaxed, allowing the satisfaction to sink in. She had requested a life without me, and I woke up the following morning with the feeling that she wouldn't like it. A feeling renewed, something I hadn't felt in a while. The weight I had been bearing. The silent weight of suspicion, betrayal, and doubt for years was at last gone. Vanessa's issues were no longer mine. She had made mistakes. Her reckless spending and self-centered decisions were suddenly catching up with her, and for once, I wasn't the one doing the cleanup. I took my time getting dressed and savored a peaceful morning, free from her frequent calls and texts. However, when I looked at my phone, I noticed that they were piled up, one after the other. Voice notes, missed calls, and urgent texts. I didn't intend to listen to her since I didn't feel sorry for her. I glanced past her name before leaving to deliver, but one message, not from her, but from Derek, caught my eye. Hey man, I'm not sure what's going on, but Vanessa is going crazy. She claims that you blocked her cards and canceled everything. She got stuck, buddy. Maybe at least work that out. I don't want to become involved in your marital drama. Rich marital drama from the man who had been having affairs with my wife while using my money to finance their... I didn't bother answering because he was acting like a good man and now wanted to seize the moral high ground. Rather, I sat back and imagined how Vanessa must have felt embarrassed during the past 12 hours, understanding she had no method to cover the cost of the fantasy she had created while Derek was there. For the first time, he realized that he had committed to a woman who lacked the luxury he did. I envisioned their argument, seeing the cracks. What do you mean you are unable to pay for anything? Derek, I don't know you. I'm not sure why, but he must have deleted my accounts, so what do you have? I believed I had a backup, but I didn't know if Derek was okay. He was likely angry because he had just learned he was alone, and not because he cared about Vanessa. There were no more first-class flights, opulent hotels, or freeloaders like him. Vanessa had based her entire life on the belief that someone, Derek or anybody else, would be there for her when times became hard. Someone would always be there to save her in the event that she fell, but because no one was coming this time, I took a slow sip of my coffee. She was now understanding what it meant to lose, and I spent the rest of the day as though I went to work, responded to emails, went to meetings, and continued acting like a man who wasn't in the midst of witnessing his wife's well-planned life fall apart in real time. The contrast between Vanessa must have been drowning in pandemonium while I had a peaceful, measured day. More texts from common acquaintances, as well as Vanessa, were waiting when I eventually checked my phone. "Claire, are you and Vanessa okay?" She's been talking to friends who had obviously heard the whispers of what was going on. Sharing strange content on Instagram, such as a description of being stranded. Mark: "Man, I'm not sure what's going on, but I watched Vanessa's tale, and she seems to be in a panic. Please let me know if you need anything." She had spent years creating the perfect image of the wealthy in an attempt to control the narrative, which was evident. The notion that she was being watched by others as she unraveled as a lovely wife with the ideal existence must have been humiliating for her to watch, her in such need and stranded. The knowledge that it was entirely her fault must have been even worse. As I browsed social media, I discovered Vanessa's Instagram tales to be precisely what I expected. Numerous desperate, passive-aggressive posts that were obviously directed at me. Being trapped in a foreign place is something I wouldn't do because sometimes the people you trust the most betray you the worst. I wish for my worst enemy because some individuals are heartless and karma always finds a way. I turned around and grinned at the rich karma that came from someone who had spent money on a different man who, while whispering falsehoods, had booked first-class tickets and 5 stars, hotels using my name. In my ear, she was attempting to fabricate a story about herself as the victim, so that anyone observing from the outside could witness her suffering rather than the truth. But the truth eventually came to light. Therefore, I chose to reject the messages from our friends and instead dialed my attorney David, who welcomed me with a cool, collected voice. "Are we proceeding professionally?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "File for divorce.